So today we're going to do an experiment called Will It Sink or Will It Float? We're going to test 10 different objects to see if they will sink or they will float. The 10 objects include a plastic straw, a metal spoon, a plastic spoon, a penny, a paper clip, a clay ball, a clay canoe made out of the same material as the clay ball, a rock, a wooden clothespin, and a rubber duck. Throughout this experiment, you will need to keep a worksheet. There's a worksheet here called Will It Sink or Float? To start this worksheet, you have to make a prediction, and then as you place the object in the water, you will see the result. So we're first going to start out with testing the straw. So we're going to make a prediction about the straw. Sink or is it going to float? Personally, I think the straw is going to float. So I'm going to write float on my prediction section. And now we're going to test the straw. As you can see, the straw is floating in the water. So under the results section, we're going to write float. The next object we're going to test is a penny. We're going to make our prediction with the penny first. Do you think the penny is going to sink or float? I think the penny is going to sink. So I'm going to write sink under my prediction section. Now it's time to test the penny. Place the penny in the water and let's see what happens. As you can see, the penny has sunk. So we're going to write sink under the results section. The next object we're going to test is the plastic spoon. We're going to first make our prediction with the plastic spoon. I think the spoon is going to float, so we're going to write float under the prediction section. Now it's time to test the plastic spoon. We're going to place the spoon in the water and see what happens. As you can see, the spoon is floating. So let's write float under our results section. The next object we're going to test is the metal paper clip. So we're first going to make our prediction with the metal paper clip. I think the paper clip is going to sink. So let's write that under the prediction section. Alright, let's test the paper clip. The paper clip has sunk, so let's write sink under the results section of our worksheet. The next object we're going to test is the rubber duck. So we're going to go make our prediction about the rubber duck. Most of you know that you have rubber ducks as bath toys, so you can assume that the duck is going to float. So we're going to write float under our prediction section. Okay, so let's test the duck. It may have toppled over, but the duck is still floating, so we can write float in our results section. The next object we're going to test is the clay canoe. So I'm going to predict that the clay canoe is going to float. So I'm going to write float under my prediction section. Alright, let's test the clay canoe. As you can see, the clay canoe is floating. So we can write float in the results section of our worksheet. Okay. The next object we're going to test is the clay ball. The clay ball is going to sink because it's heavier and it's in a ball shape. So I'm going to write sink under my prediction section. Alright, let's test the clay ball. Now remember, the clay ball is made of the same material as the clay canoe. So let's see what happens. As you can see, the clay ball sunk. The clay ball sunk because it is heavier and more denser than the clay canoe, so we can write sink under the results section of the clay ball. Next we are going to test the rock. I predict that the rock is going to sink just because it's heavier. So I'm going to write sink under my predictions section. Okay, let's test the rock. As you can see, the rock has sunk, and it's because it is more heavier and denser. So I'm going to write sink under the results section. Two more things to test. The next thing we're going to test is the wooden clothespin. I think it's going to float because it's very lightweight. So I'm going to write float under my prediction section. Okay, let's test the clothespin. As you can see, the clothespin is floating because it's very lightweight. So I'm going to write float under my results section of my worksheet. Alright, it's the last thing we're going to test in this little experiment. The last thing we're going to test is our metal spoon. So let's write the prediction of our metal spoon, and I think it is going to sink because it's metal. So let's write sink. Okay, it's time to test the metal spoon. The metal spoon has sunk because it's made out of metal and more heavier, so I'm going to write sink under my results section. Now that the experiment is done and completed, we have one more question to answer on our worksheet. The question is, what makes an object sink or float? And give two examples. Alright, so in the experiment we had a clay canoe and a clay ball. They're both made out of the same materials, but the clay canoe floated and the clay ball sunk. Why did that happen? The clay ball sunk because it's in a circle, a ball shape, which makes it heavier and more denser. But as a canoe, it's spread out and more light. So obviously, shape has an effect on what makes an object sink or float. So we can write shape as one of our examples. We need one more example. So another thing that made an object sink or float was how heavy the material is. So we had a plastic spoon, which is very light, and a metal spoon, which is very heavy and dense. The plastic spoon floated because it's very lightweight, while the metal spoon sunk because it's heavy and more dense. So we can write the weight of the material as something that affects whether an object sinks or floats. Okay, so now that the experiment is done and completed, you are going to make a concept map on bubble.us. So we're going to go to bubble.us, and we have a new sheet already set up. So the first thing you're going to do is click the Start Here button. You're going to highlight the word Start Here, and you are going to type in sink or float. This is going to be your main bubble. Everything from all the other bubbles in the concept map are going to be leading out to this. So the next thing we're going to do is press down the Control-Enter key, and it's going to create a new bubble. In this first green bubble, we are going to type the word sink. And this is going to be the results section of our experiment, that all the objects that sunk are going to go in this bubble, under this bubble. So we're going to go back up here and click the sink or float bubble, and we're going to want to hit Control-Enter again. And there's another green bubble. And in this green bubble, we are going to type float. These two bubbles, they're the results. So the first object we tested was a straw, and the result of the straw was that it floated. So we're going to click on the float bubble, and we're going to hit Control-Enter, and another green bubble shows up. And in the green bubble right here, we're going to type in straw. Okay, so this is the first result of the float. This is the first result that floated. The next object we tested was a penny. The penny sunk, so we're going to click our sink bubble, and we're going to hit Control-Enter, and another green bubble forms under the sink bubble. So in this bubble, we're going to type penny. Okay, the next object we tested was a plastic spoon. The plastic spoon floated, So we have to go back to our first float bubble and hit Control Enter. And another bubble comes from the float bubble. As you can see, now we have two bubbles coming from the previous float bubble. In this bubble, we are going to type plastic spoon. And those are the first two results that floated. The next object that we tested was a middle paper clip. And the middle paper clip, it sunk. So we're going to go back to our sink bubble, and we're going to hit Control Enter. And another bubble forms under the sink bubble. So what we're going to do is type in middle paper clip. You're just going to go back and forth between the results and go back and forth from the float bubble to the sink bubble and form new bubbles. And once you have all the results completed, this is what your concept map will look like. You'll have paperclip, penny, clay ball, rock, and metal spoon under your sink bubble. And under your float bubble, you'll have rubber duck, clothespin, clay canoe, plastic spoon, and straw. The last step you're going to have to do is click your sink or float bubble and hit your tab button to form a new bubble. And in the other yellow bubble, you are going to type your name. And you are going to grab your bubble and drag it above sink or float. And then you have your concept map completed. This will allow you to see what objects sank from the experiment and what objects floated.